ask you about your background. Where did you grow up, and how did you become an activist?
Hmm. Well, I grew up in Ringsend in the 1960s, and just really left school at the age of 15 because my dad died when I was 13, and I was told to get out and get a job, or else the uncles would be talking to you, hand up to your mother and all that type of jazz, and never really gave it thought. But I suppose I did a lot of fishing. I did a lot of stuff related to fishing because living in Ringsend, very close to all that type of stuff, collecting bait, and a deep awareness of the ecosystem of Dublin Bay, which came as a byproduct of the love of fishing. And it's amazing how that activity embedded me in this sense of a biosphere, walking out at low tide and looking at the starfish, looking at the different shells, even finding a seahorse one morning in a puddle, and then with putting out long lines and seeing all the fish following the tide as it was falling, and the birds then trying to get at your fish and all that, the different types of crabs, the different types of fish, and the seasonality of stuff. So it's incredible how an awareness can sort of fall like dew on a person without any real sense. It was a beautiful way for me to become deeply aware of nature and a biosphere and sustainability in the bay then, and then seeing stuff like concrete being dumped and getting bait in Dublin on the riverside of the area in Ringsend, and seeing all the pollution and all that, and finding that some of the fishermen, some of the older guys who were fishing for years, they were such incredible environmentalists without even knowing what the word meant, and it's quite surprising there, where you would think they were cruel and they were catching fish and all that, but they had such respect for every single aspect of fishing, and the fish, putting the fish back, only taking what they would use themselves, cycling down. They didn't have cars, but cycling down in all weathers and spending the day fishing, and then sharing the secrets then, and the knowledge of the sea and the fish and all that, And then by extension, another old man, he was in his 80s then. We took over an old mission hall in Ringsend and developed it into a product. I'll talk to you about that down the line. But this old man volunteering, and he grew up in Dublin's inner city, but he always went on walks with his brother. And he said when he first went out walking, the Cat and Cage pub in Drumcondra was where the city ended and the country began. Can you imagine that? The Cat and Cage pub. And he had such a knowledge he said there's no such thing as a weed. Everything we call a weed is just a herb grown where it's not wanted. And he mentioned about how this weed, so-called, is called fat hen. This weed is called groundsel. This is this, And again, such a knowledge. And of course, it all was lost then in a couple of generations. And how they went hunting rabbits when they were kids for the Sunday dinner. And how the chicken industry was started, and they had to find a reason to kill the rabbits. So they put down myxomatosis so that people would buy chicken. Now, this was his story. They killed out the rabbits, and then there was an explosion of duck, dandelions, an explosion of dandelion in the city because the rabbits would eat them. And then the foxes had to come into the city because they would eat the rabbits. And he had this fascinating way of saying they should never have done such a cruel industry as the poultry industry and then kill the rabbits. And by just taking one species out of the food chain, an explosion of dandelions here and foxes tearing around the city looking for food there. So all this begins to sort of well up inside of you as an awareness and as a wealth of appreciation. And I suppose that's the foundation then for the activism,
And now you run the Fair Play Cafe.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we took on the old mission hall as a project that we refer to as Mission Impossible, because the place was ready to collapse. I remember another old guy saying to me, somebody needs to give that building a decent burial because it's been lying there dying for years. And so we took it on, decided to do a couple of key things in the local community that wouldn't compete with anybody, would complement and fill gaps. And so we renamed it the Anchorage Project, because the river directly opposite was known as the anchorage for all the Ringsend trawlers used to basically anchor up there. And so we decided to start a childcare program and a cafe and a garden project, and then a way of helping projects in the developing world. So then I got the opportunity to do a master's degree, and I sort of researched through the master's program, what a hope-themed project would look like, just for the benefit of, I suppose, soundly developing the old mission hall. So we came up with the components of beauty, children, community and justice. And the beauty is the garden area, the children is the childcare program, the community is the cafe, a community space, and the justice is helping projects in the developing world. And so, we see it as a hope-themed project. And so that's the way we develop it to this day.
And you've also become very interested now in renewable energy and climate change.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
How could you not be, really? I suppose, well, through the incredible work of David Attenborough with his Blue Planet and stuff like that, having that love of the sea, having salt water in your veins, as a lot of us in Ringsend have, and then seeing his stunning work with just the stunning beauty and wonders of the deepest oceans, and then just this 2020 responsibility, you could call it. Like we have 2020 vision, but we've got 2020 responsibility to be a good steward for this. And then I suppose he put the trumpet to his lips to sound an alarm that the stewardship isn't happening. So it's just like I've got 5 children, my wife and I, and we've got 2 little grandsons now as well. And you say, well, it's blindingly obvious that we have got to take up this responsibility of stewardship in a serious way, and leave the place better than what we found it, at the very least. So doing that in a community sense is one way, trying to do that in a global way is another way, and then seeing well, how daunting is it then to take on some aspects of sustainable energy, fighting against climate change? Is it accessible? And I suppose that leads on then to how we found it was accessible then.
And what did you do exactly in the community?
Well, I suppose the best thing, in a sense, that happened then was a lady named Megan Custer. A lady named Megan Custer frequented the cafe, and she sent an email around to a whole lot of people saying, would you be interested in some sustainability stuff? And she sort of put a benefit, there's a benefit for people. It's not just something that's punitive and costly, and you sort of get that idea that, it's like flagellation, you've got to beat yourself up over this. But she put a positive spin on it and said, no, it's a win-win thing. And so I began communicating with her. Then she came into the cafe and we had a chat. And then we linked up with another guy, Fergal Purcell. And Fergal's wife, Sarah, runs the Rediscovery Centre in Ballymun. He lives locally as well. And so the 3 of us then set up Ringsend in Irishtown Sustainability sustainable energy community, and we're in the process now of changing that to Ringsend Irishtown Sustainable Energy Co-op to take it to the next level of organisation. So that way it'll be Rise Co-op in terms of a name. So we just tentatively, for me, it was completely outside of my comfort zone, completely unknown waters for me to be wading into this. But Fergal was great because he was the type of guy that could scope out the potential of your premises for, you know, doing some intentional sustainability work. And Megan was good because she had contacts then in the academic area as well. And so I said, yeah, listen, our cafe can be the HQ, you know, because having a cafe means you have a social space. Anybody can walk in, ask questions, so on. So we decided then, we got some funding from the SEAI, and Fergal and Megan worked together on an energy master plan for the Ringsend Irishtown area, which is quite comprehensive. Then we did some audits of premises in the area and anonymised them, so that if you were living on a certain street, we were trying to get an anonymised audit of what it would take to get this, that and the other done. And so what we did then at the Fair Play Cafe was we decided to change all of our electrical lighting to LED fittings and bulbs. We decided to go for smart heating controls, and we decided to go for solar panels, and then critically for cafe, we decided to get a meter in the cafe at the till, and the meter would show how much electricity is being generated right now, how much electricity has been generated since the panels were fitted, and then critically the CO2 offset for this. The panel that shows you the CO2 offset was, we had to import that from Germany. You couldn't even get it in the country. And for me, going forward, to have one of those in every primary and secondary school in the country would be absolutely golden, I believe, in bringing the children over to let them see. You know, imagine in the common area where every single child and teacher walks past and they're looking and the sun is shining, the solar panels are on the roof. That can be meaningless. People can forget about it. But if they're walking past it every morning and they see, oh my goodness, we're up to 2 tons now of CO2 equivalent, you know, that we've offset. So that's just a little personal thing, because we have it very prominently in the cafe, and customers will often say, oh wow, look, you're up to 2.5 tons, you know. And then I always talk to kids about it as well. And then the interesting thing about what we did at our cafe, right? We wanted to do not just one thing. We did 3 things: the LED lighting, the smart heating controls, and the solar panels. The interesting thing is that we got a grant from the SEAI of 50%. And the cost to us for those 3 measures was slightly less than €5,000. Now that was in 2018, okay? I was able to get it through Fergal, had connections there with different people, and we got it done with contractors that are on the SEAI's own list. But I thought to myself, oh my goodness, like for less than $5,000, you're already in the game, like, you know. And I thought there's something in this, because like you're hearing on prime time and on different programs about deep retrofits, like, you know, and it's frightening the living daylights out of a lot of people, because it's going to blow a hole in their bank account. But based on our experience, I've been saying to a lot of people, like, why not go to the other end of the spectrum and say to people, why can't the government, the SEAI, or all the interested stakeholders say, right, what's $5,000 going to give me? What's $10,000 going to give me? You know, start talking about accessible stuff, like, you know, people can make a difference with this, you know, and it's real. And like, you know, that 5 grand that we invested in 2018 has already cancelled itself out in terms of saving, in terms of, you know, making our facility much better, like the heating controls with a play school, you know, and a bitterly cold February morning, waking up at 6:30, our alarm would go off at 6:30, and you say, right, I'll just put the heat on, you know, so that's nice and toasty when the kids get in. It's absolutely unbelievable, you know.
And is the community looking at you, and are they encouraged by what they see?
Yes, I believe that they are, yeah. I believe that they're full of admiration, but the actual application of it to themselves then is where they pull back a little bit, like, you know. You know, so there's a sense in which people feel if I get solar panels on my roof, the roof is going to collapse, you know. And you know, I'd love that smart heating, but oh my goodness, plumbers have to cut pipes. Oh, like it's the end of the world. People are just so spooked by this, like, you know. So there's a real job to demystify all of this and say, look, the roof is actually constructurally better now because it has all this bracing on it now, and there's absolutely no leaks whatsoever and no potential for leaks. And you know, for getting the plumbers in to do the piping, I found that they did sort of an audit on the piping in the place anyway, and left the place better than they found it, like, you know. So it's just a great thing, and I found it a great thing that, can you believe it, for less than 5 grand, we're straight in the game there with solar panels, LED lighting, smart heating controls, which will pay for themselves in 5 years, and then after that, it's actually making you money, you know, which will then make you look at, well, what would 10 grand do then in 4 years' time?
Joe, you spoke here, you were asked to...
I was on Zoom, yeah.
You were on Zoom.
Yeah.
You came down, you spoke to the Rising Group and to Creative Ireland, right?
Was that who it was? I didn't know.
They were the ones who started. So I just wanted to, what do you think that group could do as we go forward now to encourage more people to get involved in the climate change issue?
Okay. Well, I don't know. See, I think that group is like a drama group or something like that. So, if you don't mind, I won't speak into that because I'm not into, you know, drama and all that.
Yeah.
But I think groups who are concerned about this need to be they need to be demystifying the whole thing. That it's not about deep retrofits, like, you know, that your house is going to be made into a shell and then it's going to be blown a hole in your bank account. I think that story is terrifying a lot of people. And it's making the whole thing, oh, yeah, you know, when the day comes and I win the lotto or something, I'll certainly, that'll be, you know, it's just never. People are not going to engage. So I think there's a real job to be done to approach it from the angle. We stumbled into it more by accident than design, of course, because I was, you know me, I just sort of said, I can't commit a lot of money to this, so come in at the lighter end, like, you know, and what can we do? When I was pushing Fargal and all this type of stuff, but people did it for the rate that I didn't get any big discounts off the contractors and all, it was all the going rate. So I feel that there's a real job there to say to people that this is accessible. You can find that this is accessible, and you can find that it won't damage your home. Your home won't deteriorate. It'll actually appreciate. So I think there's a lot of scope there for groups to talk into that and to instruct people and to take the fear and the terror of, you know, say putting solar panels on your roof, because people are just, it's crazy, they're just so prudish about it or something, like, you know, I'd be the only one with solar, and kids that throw stones at them, you know, it's so I think there's a lot to be done there, and I think that if an agency, somebody like the SEAI or whatever, was to start selecting streets and sort of talking about not just one person, but a whole street then, a package for a whole street. So the kids aren't going to pick one. But if there is one in the street, they might throw stones at that. But if the whole street is done, they won't, I feel, you know. So I think there's a lot that could be done there. Because I think people are, who could object to David Attenborough's argument? So I don't think they need to be converted, this idea. It's the application of it to them. It won't blow a hole in your bank account. It's not going to depreciate your home. It's going to appreciate it. And you can start. You're in the game. I don't know now, of course, with everything that's going on, I don't know what slightly under $5,000 in 2018 is now. Unfortunately, that's the big conundrum in this whole thing. But I would say, is it $7,500? But that was with us getting a 50% grant. But then, if we're going to talk about decarbonising zones and all that, you know, so I would love to think that groups like, sorry, what was the name? Rising and that, you know, that they can go to the government and say, like, we need to go out and say, this is what $5,000, okay, this is what, so you do the grants to make stuff available for $5,000, $10,000, you know, and then 4 years down the road, your $5,000 is just about paid for itself, and you're ready to do your $10,000 then, which may well be an air source heat pump or whatever it is like that, you know. So you're going in on it gradually, and your home is appreciating, you know. Look at this, my goodness here, I forgot about these. My grandsons, I suppose I better leave them on now, should I? Or am I just here, am I?
I know, you can see them, it's great.
All right, yeah, my grandsons. And then the Ukrainians were training Ukrainians at the cafe, and they were all saying, yeah, and it was just accidental.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks a million, Joe. Appreciate it, and long may it continue.
Thank you very much indeed, yeah.